Welcome back to the Civic Lens, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm your host, Ugola. So, a lot of things have occurred in the Kenyan political scene and beyond. And as our main mission reads, which is simple to bring news closer to you and also to sharpen your eyes on what's going on the democratic and the legal space, we will be tackling three major stories today. So the first story is this by Kizza Besigye, the overall opposition leader of the Republic of Uganda, who alongside a gentleman called Lutale now have gone to court and they are petitioning to have Honorable Mudavadi and Honorable Soipan Tuya declared unfit to hold constitutional office in Kenya. So this issue really has a lot of drama to it, and we will take a keen one-by-one analysis of it shortly. Then there is these two things that have happened over the weekend that we have not discussed, and we'll be giving an angle today. That is the launch of the delegates conference of the PLP party and also of the Jubilee party, and now the issues that are arising or matters arising as a result of those two conferences that were held on Friday. We'll also be taking a look at the allegations that have been made by Jeremiah Koini that might have a serious effect of dividing the united opposition, and other side stories that are coming from the Kenyan political scene. So once again, keep it here at the Civic Lens. I'm your host, Ugola. Let's start with our main story. Sometimes back, Honorable Karua was launching her book in Kenya. In that launch, she invited her friends. Among her invited friends was the leader of the opposition of the Republic of Uganda, Honorable Kizza Besigye. Now, Martha Karua's book is called Against the Tide. So she was launching this book called Against the Tide in Nairobi. She had a panel of friends and guests that she invited to come to that book launch. And among them was, as I've said shortly, the overall opposition leader of the Republic of Uganda, Honorable Kizza Besigye. Now, this is what happened. Let's start it slowly from the beginning. After these individuals arrived in Kenya, they attended the book launch for Martha Karua. Then they were sleeping. That is Mr. Lutale and Honorable Besigye. 8 men who were not actually in official police uniforms but had machine guns approached where they were and told Mr. Kizza Besigye and Mr. Lutale to follow them to the basement of that building. Now, in company of 8 gunned men, these two freedom fighters from their country, Mr. Lutale and Mr. Besigye, were muzzled in between these people up to the basement. When they got to the basement, they were driven to a police station. The person that drove them to a police station was not the 8 men that had actually arrested them. No, they were actually put in a car that had 4 other men. So the 8 men drove in another car accompanying these 4 other men to a police station. When they got to this police station, that they have not disclosed which police station it was in Kenya, the 4 men that were actually driving them took them from that police station and drove them across the border. This happened without following any legal procedures of extraditing a member of a foreign country in another foreign country, or any series of communication from the Republic of Uganda and the Republic of Kenya requesting them to return back to Uganda. It was at this point that they were actually being driven from the police station to Uganda that they realized that the 4 people that they had been handed over to way prior from their residential places were actually officers of the Republic of Uganda. Now, what happened? When they got to Uganda, Mr. Lutale and Mr. Kizza Besigye were put in a military camp, detention camp, where they were charged with the charges of actually possessing firearms while in a foreign country, funny enough. And there were subsequent fights from Martha Karua and other members of the justice system who wanted them released. Now they're outside, and immediately they came out, they filed a petition in the High Court of Kenya requiring now to have compensation given to them, but other than that, a declaration that Mudavadi and Tuya are unfit to hold offices. Other people who also are suffering stray bullets as a result of this petition of Kizza Besigye is Honorable Murkomen, Douglas Kanja, and the entire hierarchy of the DCI leadership. Now, That is the backstory. So let's look at the intricacies. Why is this important and who is this affecting? First, the question is, does the Kenyan constitution itself support foreigners to the extent that a foreigner can actually bring an issue of violation of the constitution of Kenya within the Kenyan courts? But because we cannot discuss this thing extensively until the court has made a decision on it, this is what's going on currently. So the petition has been filed before the High Court, before the judge called Justice Mugambi, and when it was slotted for hearing, the Office of the Attorney General said they request for additional little more time to file their response. Martha Karua and the team that is representing Besigye said they had actually served the Office of the Attorney General as early as 28th July, having given them sufficient time to actually form these responses and make them. So now Justice Mugambi has given the government, through the Office of the Attorney General, 14 days to file their response to the allegations that are being raised by Mr. Lutale and Mr. Kizza Besigye on how their rights were actually violated as a result of the failure of Soipan Tuya and failure of Mudavadi to follow the principles of the constitution, which in context protects a foreigner or an alien when they are within the confines of Kenya. Funny enough, the Extradition Act, under which they were actually handed over to their state after coming to visit here in Kenya, does not stipulate that possessing firearms within Kenya falls within the requirements under the first schedule of that particular act on what would contain or move our country to actually extradite an alien back to their country. So the whole thing really looks like a very political convenience. Let this guy go to Kenya, let's talk with a few Kenyan officials, let's arrest them at night, take them to a police station, then bring them over our border. Let's keep them in a detention camp, and if asked, let's say they had firearms. We don't know even if they had firearms, but whether or not they did, the development of this story and the determination of what the Kenyan courts will make will be a landmark case on whether a foreigner can actually invoke a constitutional violation within Kenyan constitution as if he was a citizen of Kenya. Now, there has been a lot of legal insight on what's going on with Martha Karua and Kizza Besigye. Let us look at Martha Karua a little bit deeply. So last week, Martha Karua and his party, the People's Liberation Party, had a national delegates conference. This NDC was attended by all the members of the party, or all the delegates of the party across the nation. We also saw an overwhelming support coming from the United Opposition. This event was attended by Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka himself, who represents the Wiper Patriotic Front, having been changed from the Wiper Democratic Party to Wiper Patriotic Front. We saw Eugene Wamalwa, the leader of DAP Kenya, also attending this conference. We saw Rigathi Gachagua, the leader of the DCP party, attending this conference. And we saw Justin Muturi, the leader of the Democratic Party, attending this conference. It would be said that other than Matiang'I, who was busy with the Jubilee conference that we'll take a look at shortly, all the other members of the United Opposition showed up for their only sister in the cardinal principal arrangement that they have right now. And they showed up robed in the colors of the PLP party to listen and endorse Martha Karua's presidential bid for 2027. Having even declared unilateral support for them and having said very sweet words of support to their sister, Martha Karua said that if given the opportunity, she will ensure that her manifesto is implemented within 5 years. Now let's start with this. You see, first, the attendance. When the members of the United Opposition rallied behind Martha Karua in that much support, it could be said perhaps that they were actually intending to support her. But then in deeper lenses, it could be said that they were actually showing up to accommodate her emotionally. It's like, what would happen if we don't support Martha Karua or show up in her party delegation national delegate conference? I feel like the appearance of all the members of the United Opposition should really not be taken as support of Martha's presidential bid come 2027, but as an innate emotional response for Martha ahead of 2027. They want to accommodate Martha so much through this journey so that when they disappoint her political bid and political aspirations in 2027, she does not bolt out and still maintain herself within the schemes. And as she was speaking and Rigathi was saying he would support Martha if the brothers and sister that she is decided that she's the candidate, you could tell the entire mood that all these people that are showing up here all have individual self-interests, and in that individual self-interest, Martha Karua plays a second fiddle. So they all showed up to support Martha or accommodate Martha for the day that they will disappoint her, to contain her expectations so that when they disappoint her and don't pick her for that position, then she does not bolt out. Because as things are really turning out, the decision on who is going to become the principal candidate for the united opposition is still a tight tuft, and in this tight tuft, Martha Karua's names is hardly mentioned as the top candidate that would be given that position. But let us not be blind to the fact that the united opposition is a meeting of minds of all equals, and anyone from that union can still make it to become the presidential candidate. Now, that aside, let's look at Martha's statement. Will Martha be able to enforce all her manifesto in 5 years if was given the chance? It's promising to a voter that wants to vote for someone who is not power greedy, number one, promising to a voter that is green, number two, and does not understand how implementation and inheritance of power takes time in the 5-year period, sometimes is very constricted on delivering on policies that you promise your electorates. And for just anyone who wants to follow something that any other politician has not said, it makes sense. But if it comes to the scope of governance, then 5-year period is actually really small if Martha's main idea is to have an overall turnabout of the entire system and create a system that will exist for quite some time. However, as it stands, the People's Liberation Party leader Martha Karua has promised that if you and I give a mandate in 2027 to become the president of this country, then she will only be a one-term president. So that's something worth considering as a voter ahead of 2027. That now, should we elect someone who's going to stay and come request us again after 5 years after they have failed or succeeded, or should we support someone that from the very beginning we have a contract that they're just going to serve for 5 years? Martha's party aside, and enough airtime on Martha Karua, let's take a look now at the Jubilee Party conference and the things on matters that have arisen as a result of this conference. You see, now this conference was to be held on the same day that the PLP was holding their conference, okay? That's the primarily fact. It was to be held on that same day, and so it was held on that same day. Unlike the PLP NDC that had all the members of the united opposition except Matiang'I attending, the Jubilee Party NDC had no member of the opposition except Matiang'I attending. And so this has sparked conversations. Is first Matiang'I with the united opposition as an individual, and number two, is Jubilee within the united opposition? Now, Jeremiah Kioni will put a rest to these questions later on in an interview that he took shortly after that conference, and would say that the Jubilee Party is in the united opposition informally, like the informal structures that it is. And since it has no document that is being signed to enclose members to it, the way it remains informal is the way the Jubilee Party is informally inside it. So this therefore means Jeremiah Kioni and the Jubilee Party highlights themselves as members of the Azimio coalition, which has since suffered a natural degradation. And Uhuru Kenyatta himself said that the Jubilee Party is part of the Azimio coalition, which has since suffered this degradation until such time that they will feel that it's prudent to get into another arrangement. All these statements are going on at a time when the presidential aspirant for the Jubilee Party ticket is a brother within the united opposition. So these conversations have been made clear by Jeremiah Kioni that if the united opposition do not fully rally behind Matiang'I, then they should count Jubilee out. Jubilee is coming with an ultimatum even before it has a seat on the table, and this is coming after Jubilee has had a series of battle of court cases where they are just coming, healing from. So they are trying to put their house in order. They don't even have a national election board yet. They have not even fronted fronted candidates on these by-elections, and they're blaming this on the previous court cases. But they're saying that once they have their house in order and are open to negotiation, now that they are not in government and they are not in the united opposition officially, then when that negotiation comes with the united opposition, then the united opposition should learn from their experience. Mr. Kioni made it very clear that they are an experienced party and there are things that they have seen from the past that they want to learn from. So all these statements that Jeremiah was making are political and evasive, just like other politicians make such statements. But if you scrap through the noise and look at the substance of what he was saying that they're actually considering a unity with the united opposition. And part of this consideration is the fact that they want the interest of Matiang'I put in center stage, failure of which they are going alone. So this ultimatum is not something that the united opposition will take very lightly, considering the fact that Kalonzo has said that he's still trying to learn Matiang'I. Ndegwa, who is affiliated with the DCP party but is not any of the principles, but could be said to be speaking the language of the DCP party, stated very clearly that Matiang'I cannot be trusted. So the united opposition is coming with the ideology that they cannot actually trust Matiang'I, yet they're still looking at Matiang'i's moves. Now, this is what they have said, that if any of the members or any of the principal was to pull out of the unity ahead of 2027, then Kenyans should treat that person as a traitor. This puts all of them on the spot to stay to that unity, upon which they will fully banish the first person to pull out. But it's very clear from the systems of how this political power arrangement works in Kenya that Matiang'I would most likely be the first person to pull out if the Jubilee party comes with their ultimatum to the united opposition stable. So on quelling the noise of why the other members did not attend, they said that this was an in-house meeting that required them to put their houses in order, and so they did not need any other person who was not a member. And so these other members of the united opposition did not boycott because they were not invited. And they said that if had they been invited, then perhaps they would have showed up. So that is what is coming from the Jubilee part. It's disheartening, but that's what is being said from their end. Now, to the by-elections that are going on and that are getting sparks across the nation, there is a resistance towards certain candidates that have since secured automatic tickets from their parties. One of them is the Kasipul Kabondo ODM candidate Boyd Were, who recently got his nomination ticket. But now people at the ground are saying they might actually move away from the ODM party if the ODM party candidate remains Boyd Were up to the day of these by-elections. So these by-elections are actually really scaling on the skins. People are wondering, how are the transitions really going to occur? And who are people that previously had like power on these grounds still going to maintain their powers on these grounds post the by-elections? We're keeping our lenses open to Malava, to Kasipul, to Mbeere North, to Basini, to Baringo, to Narok, and every other part of the country where these by-elections are happening, but to bring them to you in a very impartial, raw manner here at the Civic Lens. This is the Civic Lens.